Good morning, Peggy. Good morning, Allison. Good morning, Shelby.
Good morning, Nicole.
Good morning, Jason. Ah. All right. I'm live on mine. We're live on yours. I think we're live.
Cool. You ready?
Welcome to Books We Never Read.
Except for those we have.
I'm Nicole.
I'm Jason.
And we hope the sound and everything's working well.
That's I just got distracted by. I was like, I don't know if it works.
They'll tell us if we're just moving our mouths and no sound's coming out. This is episode 40 of Books We Never Read, where we talk about book 1 of Dune. So just to make sure that this is the book or the episode you really want to be watching, we are reading the first book in the Dune series. The first original book in the Dune series. There might be prequels. It's called Dune. And Dune is broken up into 3 books. And the first of which in Dune is called... It's called Dune.
It is.
So we're going to talk about that this week. We took 2 weeks to read that, and I'm glad that we did because I just finished it last night. Even though I wasn't procrastinating, I was very motivated to read. I've really enjoyed the audiobook version of this. I like the mix of different voice actors. I like some of the sounds they have going on in the background, like ambient sounds.
Talk about what we like in a second. We have some housekeeping to do.
But anyway, sorry. I'm just excited to talk about it. So anyways, what's the other housekeeping stuff?
Well, there's like a whole list of things you read every week.
Like and subscribe. Recommend your books to us and join us on Goodreads.
Everything's in a playlist, and so if you want to go find another book that we've read, I don't remember the whole speech. I don't normally do it, but you've been forgetting it lately, so now I'm going to have to start doing it. A couple other things. We need to change, or we have changed, the plan for the rest of the reading. We have an unexpected departure. I will be here, but nobody wants to hear just me talk about Dune Part 2. So we need to change the week that we're all going to gather and talk about it. And what does that change?
Okay, well, so I was going to ask you guys who are here now. So since we have to skip next week, do we want to just read book 2 of Dune, or read and discuss it on July 23rd, and then that would move us discussing book 3 to July 30th? Or do you want to just finish the whole thing like we would normally have and discuss the whole rest of it on the 23rd?
Peggy, I actually thought about that. I actually thought about getting somebody to co-lead.
Well, so and YouTube has a feature now called Go Live With Me.
Yeah.
That looks like you can be in different locations and go live together.
Well, so I am of the... we've had a couple people ask if we could extend the book anyway.
Okay.
A couple people had asked. And so I think it'd be a fine idea to do that, right? Like
okay.
two weeks was absolutely appropriate to finish this
first
part.
It was a lot.
And I don't know. I guess my vote, and you guys can say whatever you like. I'd say, what if we just meet back up and do book 2, and then the week after that we do book 3? And it's unfortunate, but we still get 3 full weeks. This book is so packed with things that I think we probably need it.
Okay.
Y'all give us the thoughts on that, and maybe we can just make a decision by the end of the show, right? So we can keep on going.
Okay. Yeah, Peggy says... and Peggy says, let's extend. It's so long. It's a lot. And Shelby says 2 weeks for book 2. Muad'dib, please. Okay. So
excellent. Then
we will discuss book 2...
in 2 weeks.
On the 23rd. Mm-hmm. And book 3 on the 30th. And I love the idea of us like pulling some of y'all in as subs sometimes. I think that would be so cool.
Yeah. We need to start... thank you, everybody, for liking our short this week. This is like... Now we should be talking about the book, but we're not. We had a lot of fun making it about our little air conditioning unit.
Our air went out, man.
We're going to keep doing that. But also, Greg gave us a bunch of questions that are about like our reading history and stuff. And we want to start doing little shorts and things about that. And I think it'd be fun to do some about like the people who are also playing along with us and let them do some. I think that'd be cool. So, in addition to that, I want to announce that we have hit 333 subscribers.
We're very excited about that number.
It's a cool number. It's a cool number.
Well, it's crazy to think that there's like 333 people that, as you worded it earlier, at some point thought they might be interested in hearing what we have to say.
Yeah. They don't watch, but they hit the button one time, so that's cool.
How crazy is that?
Anyway.
That's so we do thank you so much for being part of our book club and keeping it so much fun. Just all your interactions and all your recommendations. It's just been really exciting.
I really appreciate you guys being the reason that I get to say no to people on Saturday nights and Sundays. It's nice.
Yeah, we enjoy the commitment. We gotta meet Greg. Pull aside the curtain.
Yeah. He's in the Goodreads group. He's very active. Anyway.
Yeah. And yeah, I do super recommend, if you haven't yet, hop up in the Goodreads group. We're at Books We Never Read on in the Goodreads communities. I will commit to doing better at keeping that looking fresh and up to date. I tend to forget to say, like, we're done with this book and we started the next book. So it's just something new in the routine that I need to get used to.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Okay.
Let's get started.
So, if you are considering watching Dune or reading Dune, can we link it? Actually, it is in the description box, Peggy. The link to the Goodreads community. So, see if that'll work. I know the link itself probably isn't clickable. And maybe Jason can figure out how to link it into the chat.
Yeah.
But or I can do it while he's talking later. But
sure.
So if you have never read Dune before and you're considering reading the book or listening to the audiobook, but the reviews on the audiobook make you think it's not worth it, it's totally worth it. It's great.
Yeah. It is a little odd. But
I don't think it's odd at all.
Well, so I only the problem is that it swaps between voice actors and the narrator reading for the parts the voice actors read for. The guy who reads for Baron Harkonnen is fire. He is so good. I love his voice. A bunch of the other men are like real nasally and terrible sounding. I don't like the way they sound. The recording seems to be bad. But I noticed one time when the narrator was reading, because he put on a voice for Baron Harkonnen.
And you're like, that's not him.
That's not the guy, right? But that was the only time I noticed. This is the first book I think we've done where I've only done audiobook and not swap back and forth.
I've been swapping back and forth. I don't notice that the voice actors stop and then it's just the narrator until like way later. I'm like, oh, this has just been the narrator doing it. There's something about it that feels very natural. Like it's just given us scenes with all the different actors to cut up the monotony a little bit. So it's been really good.
Yeah. I'm gonna be honest. I was kind of dreading reading this. I've known about Dune forever, and I've known that it's huge, and I kind of assumed that the first movie was similar to the book, and that the newer movie was just the one that took more license or whatever. But the old movie is nothing like the book. The book is well written, and the old movie is not.
Yeah.
So it just, I was very pleased to find that it was well written and that it flowed. And that there's not just like these huge info dumps, right? Because in the movie you kind of get that where there's just like a character thinking and they're just like, here's all this stuff. And you do so much you discover so much about the world just through their interactions and the conversations that they have. So for example, one of the slowest scenes to me was the scene where they're having dinner with like the water cellar and the smuggler and all that stuff.
I love the dinner party.
It was really slow and it was good. Because you learned so much through that conversation that I thought it was really nice. So.
I had made a note about that, like the dinner party. Also, my favorite episode of The Office, so I might just have a thing for dinner parties.
There you go.
But I really enjoyed that. What you were picking up from what Jessica was learning.
Yeah.
Like who's involved with whom, and it was through all that interaction that she realized that the guild, like the guild was also involved in this treachery in here somewhere. So I really liked that. So we're talking about like the original movie and the book and then this new movie. Let's talk about the appeal of Dune.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I don't feel like tons of people have read this book. I had not heard of it before you and I started dating.
Yeah.
And I saw the thing on the Litany Against Fear on your phone.
Yeah.
But there's obviously this like massive appeal to it because if you look at the original movie Dune, you've got Sir Patrick Stewart You've got Sting. There were tons of people in that movie. They clearly thought it was something.
Yeah. Well,
It
it was a
sucks.
big deal at the time.
It's
It was a big deal.
terrible.
It's a bad movie.
It's so bad. But I want to, like, I'm motivated to watch it because I'm like, oh, Sting's coming up, and he's nice to look at. And, Sir Patrick Stewart, he's nice to look at. You look at the new movie, it's all people that are pretty.
Yeah.
Like, everyone's nice to look at. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, Zendaya?
Yeah.
Little Timmy C?
Yeah. I think what's attractive about it is like, number one, it's like the space version of Game of Thrones, right? Like it's what Game of Thrones is doing, right? The reason that we like it, the politics in it, like the battle in it, all these different things are happening in Dune. And so whatever it is that draws us to that thing is happening here, right? Another similarity between those two things, now that I think about it, is Game of Thrones is clearly in a magical world, but like magic doesn't happen all that much. And the same is true of Dune, right? Like you have magic, right? You have Jessica, you have Paul. My backwards quotations, don't worry about it. But like again, like they don't take center stage, and it's more about like just people doing what they do, right? And like mentats are like almost magic, I guess, right? And so you have those kinds of things there. I think what's also interesting is that it takes those things that we like from fantasy, right? Like you have a baron and a duke, like and you don't have to like go to the Senate and hear what the people have to say. You have these like lords that are powerful characters that move things along, that don't have to get other people to agree with them, right? They're in conflict with each other, and not like cooperation with a bunch of people for conflict with something else. This is one of the big problems with Star Wars is I don't think a Galactic Senate would work.
Yeah.
It's too crazy, right? And like too many different cultures have too many different values, and like how do you make that thing happen? And this seems much more reasonable, right? Especially because space travel is so difficult for them, right? In Star Wars, everybody has light speed, like everybody, and you just go to planets. And in this one, it's much more complicated. And so having a thing that is loyal to you that controls this planet makes a lot more sense.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
And like, I super enjoy reading Dune. I really love the new movie. Like we've watched it 4 times. I probably, until I started reading the book, couldn't tell you what was actually going on. There's just something very appealing about it. It's very mysterious, and I love the relationship between the Atreides family. I'm really like drawn to all of that, and like the sounds are nice, like the music is cool, and like it's just a whole experience that that I really enjoy. Let's see. Peggy says Paul sounds like a toddler and Piter doesn't sound silky like he's described. Yeah, that's a good point in the audiobook. And Shelby says, I have the movie voices in my head now, and it's been really helpful the second time reading around. Yeah, when you have people to attach it to, like, you have a visual and a sound to attach it to, then your brain is connecting more to that story. Even though it's reading things that it's never seen before, you can still see it play out like you were watching the movie.
So, and obviously we're not here to talk about the movie, right? But I'm always attracted to bad guys. I have no idea why. I just think they're interesting. And I really like the Harkonnens. Like I think their world is interesting. I wouldn't want to live there. I just think it's interesting in the movie, right? You see it briefly. And it's played by like the Skarsgård dad or whatever the Baron is, and he's like this hulking person with his little like floaty suit or whatever. And what's cool about the book is that you get a little bit more character development of the Harkonnens than you do in the movies. And I think some of that's coming in this upcoming movie.
Okay.
But I mean, I just think they did a really great job of making those characters interesting and kind of obviously in the book you have more time to discuss, and so the conflict in the movies, all you get is Harkonnen's out, Atreides in, fight, right? And in this one you get to see kind of a little bit more of like the nuance of that, like what sides are really involved, and that's cool. And so there's a lot more politics in the book. It's really bare bones in the movie.
Yeah, the Harkonnen guy gives me the heebie-jeebies. And Shelby says Jason Momoa. Always a yes.
Always a yes. You ain't wrong. He plays Duncan Idaho.
Yeah. And Peggy says that, she's heard about Dune before but was never interested, but now she sees it everywhere. It was on The Chase
Yeah.
last night on TBS.
Yep. It's gonna be great. I mean, it's that might be this month. It's coming out soon. So
The second
yeah,
one?
it's real soon.
Yeah. Yeah. So, okay.
What about the book?
So we've talked a little bit about, the Atreides versus the Harkonnens. So let's kind of go into that a little bit. So one of the things that stands out to me in this setting is, so we know that this is the story of Paul Atreides, right? Like Atreides, is it Atreides or Atreides?
Yeah, they say things different. I like the way the movie pronounces things just because it sounds better. Atreides.
Atreides. So yeah, we know it's going to be the story about him, but when we see him initially at the beginning of the book, he's just a very reasonable kid. Like, he has a good relationship with his mom. He has a good relationship with his dad.
Yeah.
He has great relationships with his dad's men,
Yeah.
right? Like Idaho, and who's the other one that does the sword fighting with
Gurney
them?
Halleck.
Okay. Yes, Gurney Halleck. He has all these really strong leaders in his life.
Yeah.
He's not whiny. He's not, I don't want to be a duke, or I don't want to use the boy. Like, he's not pitching a fit about everything. He does have, concerns and hesitations, but he's very open to listening to his parents, and they love him clearly, and they love each other clearly, even though there's some political issues with, like, the Duke never married the Lady Jessica and all that stuff. But you really see this very nice family unit raising the next generation of their lives.
It's all like rather healthy, right?
Yes, it's so nice, and it makes it so sad, that they just all get.
They're all a little cold, right? Like they're all like I do think they all care about each other, but whenever the Reverend Mother or whatever her name is says like there's no hope for the father, Jessica's like, all right, okay.
Well, I mean, when she's
and she's clearly tore up that he dies,
right? But it's. Surely she's heard that before, is what I think. Yeah. And also, if the Reverend Mother's saying it, you don't pine over what she says. She has said it, and so there's something to it.
There's a element of like efficiency to them, though, right? Where it is what it is,
So that one of the themes that Dune has going through it is this theme of destiny and fate. And so we're looking at Paul, and we know that his destiny, Jessica hopes his destiny is to be
the Cuisinart's Haderach. What do you call it? Or she calls it something else.
The Cuisinart Snack Attack.
Cuisinart Snack Attack.
Is to be that.
Yeah.
By the end of book 1, Paul has already seen all the possibilities of his future, perhaps.
Yeah.
And he knows that he's not going to be the Cuisinart Snack Attack. He's going to be something else.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Yes. I know where this is going, so I'm not going to say anything, but...
Okay.
Yes.
And so that's kind of interesting, just in terms of the fate discussion. Also interesting in the fate discussion is when the mother,
Jessica?
the mother superior, sorry,
yeah.
Came and said there's no help for the father. The way that Paul kind of molded that around a little bit, and he's like, well, that can't be true.
Yeah.
Like, there's got to be a way around that and a way to protect. And if you can see, then why can't you prepare for, and then we see all that happen with him getting taken over by Yui and Ellis Yui. And then
I have in my head rewritten Dune, but everybody is Cajun people. Everybody. And it's fascinating. It's going to be a great movie, and if I can find somebody to like make a little YouTube video for me, we'll put it out there. But
we know that that's a motif that we'll be chasing, is what's Paul's fate, what's his future, and we know the people of Dune, the Fremen, are also tied into that, and they are calling him something of their future. They're recognizing, like, he knows how to use his still suit, and he knows how to tuck in his pants, and all that.
So, and the theme of fate goes, so much deeper than all just that. It's really about there's like this theme about like the illusion of choice, right? Like you're a duke, so you should be able to do whatever you want to do. but you're going to go to Dune, even though you know you're going to die here, and do it because that's what you have to do. And you're a Bene Gesserit, and you should be able to make anybody do whatever you want to do. But you're going to let your husband die because that's what you have to do, right? And it's about like all these powerful people who should have this element of choice who are literally just playing a role, right? And it's about the illusion of that, I think. So
Yeah, it's very interesting. Very interesting. Shelby says, I want to know more about the Bene Gesserit training school and the background there. And I think that there's a whole series.
Oh, really?
A little side series, or maybe one book that's a side series on the Bene Gesserit.
I want to touch on that, actually. I think the Bene Gesserit are really interesting because they're like the Jedi of Dune or whatever, kind of. And talk and loop it back into like this illusion of choice, because I assume in our next reading we'll see more about the Fremen prophecies about Muad'dib.
Okay.
But like all of that was planted there by the Bene Gesserit. And that part's a little confusing. And I have a friend who's read Dune several times. And I asked him about it, and I'm still not quite sure I understand the answer. But they have this Missionaria Protectiva, right? Which is like the Bene Gesserit CIA, I guess. And they went to Dune, it appears, and generated these prophecies about a Bene Gesserit to come that would like change their lives. And they just like made it up, right? Like they made it up. And they didn't do that knowing that Paul even like existed.
Right.
And so it seems to me that like this is probably not something that's just unique to Dune or to Arrakis. It is probably something that they do all over the place. And it's almost like setting up a safe house for like some unknown person in the future, right? They've just like generated this like weird religion on Arrakis so that whenever a Bene Gesserit shows up, they've got things set up so they can like get it rolling to do whatever they want.
Right.
I guess is what it looks like.
And so, I mean, that makes sense when you look at what's being done to Arrakis. You know, this is a planet that's been completely raped of it's just being raped for its resources, right? You have people who live there and they are living as hidden citizens, you know, like they're living under the radar, literally in little caves. And they're not taking an active part, particularly in the politics of what's happening to their planet, but all their resources are being stolen from them. And so, you know, it's colonization, right? Like, So, you know, we see that happening. So it totally makes sense that they're going to be manipulated by, you know, some other force that has a hand in the game. But it's also very realistic too, right? Sure. I mean, like, the institution of religion needs control. And they find ways, you know, to make sure that they continue that level of control through prophecy, whatever that might be. Maybe it is sent from God and maybe it's not, but it is the level of control.
But like when you're the Bene Gesserit and you set up the prophecies, then you can just, and so like Jessica keeps like picking up on these things that are like, oh, like that's in our stuff, right?
Yeah.
So she like knows how to fulfill their prophecies. And like it's kind of brilliant. You know, we'll just go over here, we'll set up this thing, and then you show up, and then you just like check off the list, and then all the people will do what
prophet.
You need. Yeah, perfect. You'll have help.
It's so manipulative.
It's smart.
It's smart for
manipulative, I guess.
For, you know, Jessica at her level, right? Like that's great. But what about the Fremen? You know, who are tying their hopes into this, and it's all just a setup.
I mean, is there really any difference between them having prophecies that were given to them by somebody for a purpose, or them having prophecies from like some guy that was high on spice, who has a purpose even if he can't admit it to himself?
Right.
Like, come on.
No, but when you can, it's one thing when there's shadow puppeteers. It's another thing when you can straight up point at the puppeteer.
Like it's okay if you can't point at
it. It seems it.
I'd rather know my enemies.
We call that faith. You know, it's sure. It just feels different.
Yeah.
Okay, so Peggy says her logic about what makes a human is dumb. I feel something hot, I take my hand away. So let's talk about that for a second.
That was interesting.
What do they mean by human?
Yeah. So the point is, I think like the most telling line in that interchange is where she says like an animal caught in a cage will gnaw off its own arm, right? So the deal is, put your hand in the box, you'll feel pain. If you remove your hand, I'll kill you. So like if you can't handle the pain, the right answer is to cut your arm off. That way your hand is still in the box, right? Technically, and you're good, right? And so she can't kill you because your hand is still there. And so I think like it's this thing where the animal would do one of these things and the human would be able to rise above and make it through the pain or whatever. Is it a dumb test? Yeah, it's dumb.
But what are they looking for? If you're not human, who are they considering a human?
They're considering Bene Gesserit to be human.
And then everyone else is not.
As an animal. Is it all that different from like this is another one of those things where like when you look at it like that you're like, oh, that's not good. But is it really all that different from some of the tests that we have come up with for ourselves?
No.
No.
But it's so. But what it's bringing me around to is at the end of book 1. So again, you know, if you haven't read up to the end of book 1 in Dune, please stop unless you want things to be spoiled. But once Paul gets like the overload of spice and can see everything, he's like, Jessica, duh, you're a Harkonnen.
Yeah.
So is she an animal? And how did she not fail the test?
No, she's a human. She took the same test, right?
But she's Harkonnen.
Yeah. But I mean, look, it's just why pain is the only thing that can determine whether or not you like make it into our club is like what if that was a dead hand, right? Like, I don't know.
Yeah, use this one.
Yeah. Clearly that's a Kwisatz Haderach, and he's like, I haven't felt anything there for 10 years, right? What if you don't have hands?
Right? I mean, and that's not the whole test. That's just part of the test. That's
Sure.
one of their like things that they look at.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of a weird. It's testing his willpower, right? It's testing the overcoming of fear and pain, which is something. It's about control, right? Because the Bene Gesserit are all about control, and they're about to master others, you have to master yourself, right? And like it's like weird and demeaning to be like everybody else is an animal, but
yeah,
but aren't we all, right? Like
right. Well, I mean, like we literally
they're trying to find
are,
that next. You know, it's the whole like Kwisatz Haderach idea and the Bene Gesserit and all that reminds me a lot of the like an Ubermensch sort of thing from Nietzsche, right? And there's an element there of self mastery and overcoming pain and fear, and I see a lot there.
Okay. So. That makes sense. Shelby says, did anyone else also get a sense that Lady Jessica had some choice in the gender of her child? She was supposed to have girls.
Yeah.
Is the message I've gotten so far. She did have. She clearly was able to control that.
Yeah. Yeah. It's not like explicit, but
they imply that she's able to control
it seems highly likely that she chose this. No. Because she thinks that she can be the one, right, to do this thing.
Yeah. So. And I mean, you know, that's interesting that, you know, in the real world, there are some of the male species that believe that women can control what gender they give birth to. And so maybe that's just like a hang up of that. Maybe they think that you can control, like, how dare you give a son when you needed to give a daughter? It's like, well,
I mean, but they have enough technology that they might be able to literally control that.
Yeah.
You know, and we're just not told.
Right. So. But I was saying it can go either way. Like maybe she can control it. Maybe it's very similar to the hang up in the real world where they think that we can control that sometimes. Let's see.
Like when she knew what she said. I like when she knew what to say about the knife. Play along and dupe these people. I like Mapes. Is something Peggy said. The whole knife thing was really interesting because she didn't really have any training on it, but she was able to pick up on the cues. You know, it's like it's almost like cold reading. I think cold reading is really interesting because you just make people think that you know something just by making basic guesses and then doing stuff. And that was a cool scene, right? And then she like barely cut her so that like technically the obligation was fulfilled or whatever, right? You must draw my blood. It's like, all right, here you go. We're done here. There's a lot of like weird technicalities in this book.
Yeah. And Mapes was an interesting character, and it was sad when she got killed.
Yeah. She had a funny voice in the thing.
Yeah, really weird. Peggy says, yeah, she was supposed to have a girl, but she chose a male, like at the supermarket.
Yep.
And Peggy says, I got the sense in the beginning that humans were mating with animals. It was confusing. They're looking for purebred humans.
Yeah. I don't know that that's the case. Now something, though, that's interesting is, and they made some hints to it. You'll notice that there are no, like, robots. There are no AIs. Part of the reason why the Spacing Guild exists is because they use the spice to, like, expand their minds. They get high, and then they can chart paths between the stars so they don't crash into the stars when they go light speed or whatever, instead of a computer doing it. Because, and there's like barely a mention to this, at some point in the past, there was this like AI uprising, and so they've banned all these computers, which is why we have mentats. They're basically human computers, and stuff like that, right? The guild navigators and everything, and so the question is like, what are the Fremen, right? The Fremen must be people that got to Arrakis before all this was happening. Like they're like the natives, but there's only humans. There's no aliens at all that we know of in this book, and so they've been there for a while. They came there somehow, and then they've been like almost rediscovered, because it seems to me that once they figure out what spice was, right? So they find out about spice so that they can use their guild navigators or whatever, but the Fremen are already there. And so, even though humans aren't mating with animals, I don't. There's different kinds of people at this point, right? They're not.
It seemed more like a race superiority type thing.
Yeah.
Very Nazi-esque.
Yeah. And I bet most people don't travel between planets.
Yeah. What? Okay, so just catching up on the chat.
Yeah.
Shelby says it said something about Ben and Gesserit repopulating bloodlines of the great houses, and Peggy says
she said, "Don't read that comment out loud."
Yeah.
But yes, it's fair. Yeah, I think that part's. I'm really attracted to the whole idea of like the human computer thing. I think it's interesting.
Yeah. Okay. So was Paul thinking that he was training to become?
He is. They are training him. So there's two guys. There's Gurney Halleck and there's somebody named Hallett, I think. Because I didn't read, I don't know how to spell them, so it's hard for me to tell the difference. But there's
Howitt.
two guys.
Yeah.
Howitt. So Howitt is a mentat and one of his like mentors, and he was kind of training him to be a bit of a mentat.
Okay.
So they're kind of combining all these things together, right?
Yeah. Okay, that makes sense. Let's see. Yeah, Shelby says Gurney, Halleck, and Howitt, right? Yeah. Their names are really close together. Let's see. Oh, so some things that I thought were cool, just in observation. I thought it was cool that Leto thought it was stupid to do these like water wasting procedural things or ceremonial things. Like, just instead of let's throw water on the floor and splash around in it and then poo-poo it, just give a cup of water to every person that comes up to the door. Aw.
He's a good guy.
What a stand-up guy. And what's the name of, it's a woman in the movie, Fremen, but the Fremen that comes with them.
Judge of the Change. It'll come to me.
But even it's
Kynes. Dr. Kynes.
Even Dr. Kynes noticed, that Leto was willing to put his own son at risk to save people, like that he cared about people and not just the resource. And so, as far as the Fremen go, having the Atreides there that's the first time they've seen people on their planet besides themselves that care about the people and not just the spice.
Right. Well, and but like also like they're still oppressors, right? Like I don't like, they might be better, but like they still kind of are. And Baron Harkonnen kind of has that idea, right? He's going to put Peter in charge of the planet so that it's a hellhole, so that he can then put his nephew in charge, and then it's like moderately better, so they like him. And that's kind of like what happens with the Atreides, right? They're just coming on the tails of Harkonnen, so
they seem like saviors.
So, this water could all be yours if we weren't here, but like, look, I'm letting you have water, right? So, but the scene where they take the ornithopter and save all the guys out of the spice harvester and all that was a really well done scene. I enjoyed that, and that's a difference between the movie and the book. Is in the book they allegedly, you don't actually see it happen, but you're told that they discover that a Harkonnen agent took the carry-all and like was going to sell it or something.
Straight up sabotage.
Yeah, sabotage. And in the movie, for whatever reason, it just breaks down.
Yeah.
So.
But and it came to the same end. It was still a form of sabotage because the Harkonnens left them with broken machinery.
And I guess there's just less to explain because the movie is trying to avoid most of like the politics and the
for now.
Yeah, shenaniganry.
Yeah. Um, Peggy says, from what Paul said, how could the Harkonnens leave if the spice is addictive? How do other people? Yeah.
So that's actually another interesting point, right? The Fremen all have blue eyes. Paul goes out in the desert, gets his mind blown. Why aren't they having that happen in town? And I think the reason it doesn't happen in town is because there's a shield over the town. I'm not certain about that.
I think that it referenced that.
But there's I think it keeps the spice out, and so I think that's why maybe they can all leave, is because they don't leave town.
They don't go into the desert. No one else, the Harkonnens weren't going into the desert.
Yeah, and even when they do, they have their like suits on or whatever, or they're in their little ships. But I think that's probably why they can leave.
Yeah. And Shelby says, Dune exports spice to other places. The guild needs it to be able to travel through space. And so maybe they have, even if they did gain that addiction to it, they've still got access to it.
So and so they do mention that at the end of our reading, the Duke mentions that somebody must not have discovered that they destroyed a backup spice deposit that the Harkonnens had off world somewhere. So. But yeah, they might have had access to it, so they could keep going. Some, I mean, they're putting it in their coffee and stuff, right?
Right.
They're
yeah,
just like drinking it, so everybody's getting addicted. Yeah.
Coffee. It's really the pumpkin spice latte of the sci-fi world. I mean,
it's real basic.
We get it. Like, I made cold brew last night, and it's packed full of cinnamon.
Yeah, we put cinnamon in it so we could have our spice.
That's for spice. Yeah. Okay, so other cool stuff that I have written down. Can we talk about how creepy Harkonnen is?
Yeah, he's creepy. Okay, so because I never read the book before, I didn't know that he had like a slave that looked like Paul Atreides for purposes. That freaked me out. I think that's a great way to like show this guy's not good, right? Like, clearly he's a bad dude, but it explains a lot more about what he's doing with his life and why he wants all this to happen. I guess.
My annotation in the book, because I just like typed it as I was listening, I was like, oh my.
It's weird.
That's really weird. Let's see. In the OC Bible, there's a reference to like a song, a time to keep and a time to cast away, a time for love and a time for hate. OC Bible straight up lifted that from the Birds' Turn, Turn, Turn. Did anyone else catch that?
Yeah.
Do y'all know what song I'm talking about?
No. That sounds familiar.
Oh my god. You got
I think I know that song.
Yeah, I knew Peggy would be on board with the cinnamon too.
Remind me if ever I get arrested, I'll be like, that's my cinnamon. Right?
Yeah.
I heard they had found some cinnamon at the White House this week.
Yeah.
So one other interesting thing is nobody's going to care about this at all, but there's a video game based on Dune it's like a strategy game where you fight and you can place all the different houses, and there's multiple ways to win. One way is by like killing everybody, and one way is by having like a majority of the shares in CHOAM, which is really interesting because CHOAM is technically the organization that controls. It's like the market. It's like the stock market. And they talk about CHOAM several times because everybody gets a cut of like what the profits from a spice and all these other things. And so it's not really clear to me how that organization is managed and like outlined. But it's a market entity that all the great houses have a part of. And the Spacing Guild is in there, and the smugglers are like avoiding CHOAM. And then on top of that, we don't just have the Emperor, we also have the Landsrad, right? And the Landsrad is what all of the houses are a part of. And it's almost like the Senate, right? Like they have some kind of voting power, and it's offset by the power of the Emperor himself. And so there's all these like political entities that have kind of been mentioned to us that I don't really understand their interactions. So
Interesting. Let's see. I liked the way that that feeling of purpose developed in Paul. You know, it started very small with just kind of like something like laid on his heart in a way, you know, like he feels the sense of purpose, but he doesn't understand what it is and what it means. Yeah. And by the time we're done with book 1, it's like it's a raging purpose. Right. Yeah. It has consumed him and turned him into a completely different person.
Yeah. I mean, after this trip he's on from all the cinnamon. I don't know. I don't know like how he comes back from that, right? Like how do you get your mind blown in that way?
Yeah.
Then you're just like, hey mom, what's up?
Oh yeah, is he gonna settle back down after this high wears off,
right?
or is he at an elevated level now
idea.
forever?
It's like a bad trip, right? Like it just breaks something in your brain and you never come back. So.
Yeah, that's crazy. Oh my gosh. Okay, so Shelby says play the board game Terraforming Mars after reading this book, and Chum makes much more sense.
We love Terraforming Mars.
It's one of my favorite games, and I don't even ever win. I don't care to win. I just get excited about terraforming the planet.
Yeah, it's really cool.
But now I'm starting to think about it differently. Now seeing like the Fremen and people.
Well, Mars doesn't have people, so that's
yeah, but people manipulating the planet. Well, maybe there are things on Mars, and we just don't understand that it's life.
They're coming out with another Dune video game. You know, I like also like survival games, like Ark and stuff like that. But they're coming out with a MMO Dune that's a survival game on Arrakis.
Oh wow,
it's gonna be cool.
Oh, the worms freak me out. Peggy says one thing that I want to put out there: before they left Caladan, Howitt said, "Parting with friends is sad, but a place is just a place." That spoke to me.
Yeah.
That is a really great point, Peggy.
There's a little, there's a little reference to homesickness, which is interesting. And it's not clear to me how you will become homesick for a whole planet, right? Like I don't know that that's possible. But Duke Atreides talks about it. He says, he will never think of Arrakis as home. And Paul, but he hopes that Paul will, and I thought that was kind of an interesting idea. But yeah, a place is just a place, and the idea that they just kind of picked up and went somewhere else. Also, like the entire like medieval, everybody has like a fief and there's different things. That stuff is confusing to me. Just like who gets what and like what belongs to who and how it all never made sense.
In terms of, it's odd for us to think of being homesick for a whole planet. That is hard for us to understand because we are planet bound. And so we become homesick for, like, if we go to, Europe for a while, we'll start getting homesick for home again. But, like, being anywhere in America, we'll be like, we're back! Even though we're not really back.
Right.
And so I think it's the same thing. If you're jumping planets, you're like, well, I really want to be back in my little town, but if I just set foot anywhere on the planet,
that's good.
I'm back.
Sure.
Because you know it.
Yeah.
It is within you, and you know it. And for Paul, the spice is within him now, and he knows it.
Yeah.
Like, he knows the planet. He is seeing the Fremen in his dreams, in his waking dreams. Right. He is now in Dune, and Dune is in him. Yeah. And so he now has that connection.
Sure. But that makes sense. I mean, when I cross the state line out of the state, I get mad. Just immediately.
Especially for going west.
Just pissed off.
And so this idea of homecoming and homesickness. Yeah. So for some reason, as I read Dune, I think about the motifs that exist in the Odyssey. And I think it's because, like, Atreides is such, like, a Greek sounding name and whatever. And because the Odyssey is, the standard for which we judge other, like, adventures, right? And I don't know that this is really an adventure novel, but there is adventure aspects to it. And so the aspect of homecoming is a really important motif in the Odyssey. You are not who you are until you're where you're supposed to be. And poor Paul, he is from Caladan. That was his home. This planted prophecy from these other people are making Arrakis his home. And he, according to the trailer to the next part of Dune, he's going to be waging a whole war, protecting this.
Well, just you wait.
This whole new home. I mean, and so it to me, it makes it seem like Paul is our hero who is never going to have that feeling of being settled and home. Yeah. Because he can't go back to Caladan because he's addicted to the spice too much.
I guess we don't know that for sure, but
he's all up in it.
Well, I'm not saying that we don't know that he's addicted to it, but we don't know that he can't go somewhere else.
Well, and he's even said he can't leave the planet now. Like, it's in him. He's too wound up in it at this point. Well, okay. I mean, we'll see, right? Like, that's just, I'm interested in seeing how the motif develops. Yeah. but it just seems like he's going to be unsettled. You know,
Well,
he's not really going to be Fremen.
Yeah.
He's always going to be otherworldly.
Yeah. But I think the idea of being displaced is important for a hero, right? Like, I guess it's unfortunate, but like Frodo must leave his, like, you are not a hero if you are at home.
Right.
Right? Like, you cannot be.
Right.
And so
I'm the hero of my couch.
Fair enough.
Just ask my dogs.
So I think I think that's sort of like why this has to happen. And there's something, I think there's something powerful about heroes that never make it home. Like, you know me, I don't like happy endings for my good guys, because I just want them to like have lost something irreparable, right? Like, and you know, even though like Frodo makes it home, like he's never okay again.
Right.
You know? Like, he's got the PTSD.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. No, that's all interesting things to kind of track throughout the development of the book. And like we know, there's way more books in the series, and so obviously this goes beyond Paul,
right.
you know, to his future lives or something. Yeah. Okay, let's see. Peggy says, every time he talked about purpose, I sang the song from Avenue Q. I have never seen that, and I need to see that. Peggy's talked about it a few times. And Shelby says, I have 3 expansion versions coming back from the U.S. this summer. This is a new government version of Terraforming Mars.
So, probably whatever phone servers you have, I know on Google they have it, but you can play Terraforming Mars on your phone. And so I have it, and I can just play against computers, and you can probably play against other people, but it's a good way to practice.
It's just a fun game.
Yeah. All right, we're almost up on an hour, so anything else?
I feel like I had more I wanted to talk about. Do y'all have anything else to say? Throw it in the chat real quick.
I was almost dreading doing this. I'm honestly really impressed that we had so much to talk about. Not because there wasn't so much to talk about. This book is full of stuff, but because it was so overwhelming and so tied together. You know, like there was never. It's really hard to be like, and then this one scene, right? Like West with Giraffes, you can be like, that scene with the waterfall, that's cool, or whatever, right? There was no waterfall scene, but. You know, I just thought this would be a difficult show to do, and it wasn't.
Yeah. I mean, it's a very tightly bound story. Everything is related to everything else. There's no scene that stands alone that doesn't connect to, you know, the Harkonnens' sabotage or, you know, whatever. Does anyone feel bad for Dr. Yui?
I mean, I get that he's supposed to be tragic, right? Like, they kidnapped his wife or whatever. So, he has imperial conditioning, right? So, he's not supposed to be able to be a traitor. And so, he's not he's not supposed to be a good guy because he's a good guy. He's supposed to be a good guy because he cannot choose otherwise.
Right. Again, so theme of choice and illusion of choice.
Yeah. So, that makes him less sympathetic.
Yeah.
Because he was conditioned to be this way. And then at the end, when the Baron is like, nah, we killed her, and now you can go be with her. Haha. And he was like, you didn't think I knew this? You could have just killed yourself, right? Like, you could have just skipped all this and got to that part.
No, but he wanted to use Leto to kill Harkonnen.
I get it.
And so I think...
It was going to happen anyway.
I think that makes him a bad.
Yeah. Oh, no. I have no sympathy for him.
Yeah.
Just don't.
Yeah, and it's frustrating that Jessica is so insightful and noticed that Yui was holding something back, but didn't dig a little deeper at that to figure out what that was. Yeah. And so that kind of hurts a little bit. Let's see. Peggy says, when Jessica woke up and talked about the clock not being adjusted, she laughed so hard. Yeah, 21 minutes? How is that like a time difference? Yeah. What the heck? That was weird. Subtract 21 minutes. That's half the women in my family who do that on purpose. I was thinking about that the other day, that like, because we now all use smartwatches and stuff, there's no more setting your clock forward so that you're always on time. Gone are the days. You just got to set an alarm. Yeah. Anyway, Shelby says, I was bummed Leto didn't follow through and kill the Baron. That scene in the movie and in the book just killed my heart. I mean, he's like, I've got it. And then the
psych
Baron just like slithers away, and In the movie, it's really gross the way he like floats up to the
Yeah.
ceiling. In the book, he just leaves the room.
Yeah.
I like him just leaving the room. He freaks me out the way that he can float.
One thing I'm looking forward to in the next movie is the Baron's nephew, whatever his name is. It doesn't matter. But the Baron's nephew does not exist in the movie, in the first movie. He's not there. And he is going to be in this next one.
The little bald dude.
The little bald kid. Yeah.
Gotcha.
There's nothing scarier than a bald child.
Oh, that was another thing.
I'm just saying.
That was another thing that I wanted to talk about. I liked the way that the two scenes were kind of sandwiched between each other. You had, or three scenes. You had quality scenes with Paul and his family and the men in his life. You had Harkonnen and Piter and his nephew, and they're all just slimy and gross and like manipulating each other. And then you have Paul and the people in his life.
Yeah.
And, but you can see like how these two family lines are being raised up and what the expectations are within those family lines. And one, you have the expectation of honor and goodness and whatever, and then the other, the expectation of success. You just get your power and you control everyone in your life.
Well, okay, so this is my last point, and then I'll be done. Why are these people so significantly different? And part of me wonders, like, the world that they live on, right? Catelyn is a good place, and it can afford to have good people. And Giddy Prime is where the Harkonnens are from, and I don't really know anything about it. But what if it's terrible? Mm-hmm. And what if there is something about that environment that makes people, like I was saying about Star Wars, right? Like, I just don't think you could have all those aims go together. When you have people that have been living on these planets for thousands of years, what differences in values does that make? And I'm not saying that the Harkonnens are like understandable or sympathetic or good, because they're not. Yeah. But is it understandable, right? How they get to this point? You
live a harsher life when your conditions have been harsher. Yeah. And you can afford to be more good when life is good.
Yeah.
It's not a big ask of the family Atreides to be good when things have been so good for them.
Yeah. And something about, I don't know, the whole, the Duke putting himself in danger to go save all those people. His father died fighting bulls.
Yeah.
And so, but again, this idea of putting yourself in danger for the thrill of it almost. And so, like, I hadn't really thought about that before, but there might be something there where, they're not risk averse, but maybe because they aren't confronted with risk all the time. And
it's a little more thrill-seeking behavior, and we see that from his dad. Yeah, I'm glad that you brought that up, because I've been wondering, like, why did we spend time on this picture?
Yeah.
And with the bull or the horns and whatever, and what significance does that have in Leto and in Paul?
Yeah. I'll think about that some more.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. Yes and no on Yui. It speaks to a tiny bit of hope, but it also speaks to being naive. And Peggy says, I disagree with that. You choose to be a duty head in harsh conditions. People who have it good can still be jerks.
I definitely agree with that too, right? I definitely agree with that. But I think you're more likely to find good people in good conditions. It's a probability thing. You're more likely to find the good people as we define them in good conditions, and more likely to find bad people in bad conditions. Also, like, you could be a bad person and then be like, I'm going to go find this place because the environment suits itself to you, right?
Right. Well, and to Peggy's point, when they're on Dune and they bring in the person that Idaho had worked with, and the guy spits on the ground, and everyone's like,
he's one of my favorite characters. I love Stilgar.
So that's him showing his rough behavior based on the conditions of the world he lives in. Yeah. It looks rough to these people who haven't had it rough, and it has to be translated over. No, he has given up his life force to you, to show respect to you. He has spat on the ground. He's given up his water. Yeah. So there's also, you might be rougher because your conditions are rougher, but there's also a perspective issue. Yeah. That your behaviors are being interpreted by someone else who's not as harsh. Yeah. So those behaviors are being seen as harsh.
But I absolutely agree with Peggy. It's always a choice, right? Whether or not you're going to be good or bad is a choice. your environment makes those makes those choices look more or less favorable. Your environment can also hide those choices from you, right? If you're in an environment where nobody has ever done something good and you don't understand that that's an option, then you don't take that option because you don't get it, or because you've never seen it happen.
Yeah.
Anyway, but
Again,
that's
kind of coming back to the illusion of choice.
Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah. This is why I like to read and discuss it. Because if I just read, I'd be like, ew, Harkonnens are gross.
Yeah.
Next chapter.
They're still gross.
But
bad people.
But in this, conversation, we get to kind of deep dive into, what makes a human.
Yeah. I don't know. I spend a lot of time around
people who've made some choices,
right? I'm not going to say bad people because I know them, but
yeah.
I spend a lot of time around people who have chosen the thing I would not choose.
Yeah.
But, and when you look at them, you're like, oh, these are bad people, right? That's the knee-jerk reaction. And whenever you look at them, you realize that these are people who have made bad choices. When you understand, like, the situation that they've come from, and then it makes a lot of things make more sense. Not in every case, by any means, but some. And anyway, there's no evidence for me to think that about the Harkonnens, right? They could just all be terrible people just because they want to be.
Right.
But it's an interesting. It plays into this idea of fate and false choice that I'm hanging on to. So, salvage the bones. That's a great point. Peggy says, "Look back to salvage the bones." Yeah. Good job bringing a book we read into the next book. Nobody has ever used salvage the bones in a reference to Dune. You're the first person on the planet. That's awesome. Congratulations.
So if you're new to the channel, you're watching this in the replay. If you're interested in Salvage the Bones, it's playlisted for you in the playlist section of our channel.
I did Westwood Giraffe, so hey.
Yeah, that's also playlisted for you. So, and bam, says Peggy. All right, so we wrapping this up?
Yeah, I think we need to wrap it up. This is the longest video we've ever done.
Oh, golly. Sorry,
Probably
guys.
the longest reading we've ever done.
I've had a really great time.
Yeah.
So, again, if you're with us in the replay, please contribute to the discussion in the comment box below. We love to hear what you have to say about it. We can take the discussion off of YouTube into Goodreads as well, so you could join us there. Any book recommendations, anything like that, throw those into the chat or the comments as well. Yep. And I'd like to do a quick This Week in Literary History.
Do it.
We're celebrating the birthday of Dean Koontz. If you've never read anything by him, I super duper recommend. Just pick anything. It's great. Odd Thomas is a great series that he wrote as well. And The Watchers has been recommended to us as a fun read. Carolyn Nee, who was not born Carolyn Nee, but that was her pseudonym. She was a contributor to the Nancy Drew series. She was born this week in 1905. Wow.
Cool.
I didn't even think about someone born in 1905 was writing Nancy Drew. Nancy Drew seems very, modern to me, but it is. Yeah. 1905 is fairly modern, I guess, ish. And then Henry David Thoreau was born in 1817 this week.
Cool. In terms of final housekeeping, do not forget, we have now all decided that we will not be meeting next week. We're going to meet the following week to discuss Book 2 of Dune, and then the following week to finish Dune. That's Book 3. So the 23rd or something.
Yes, we'll see you on the 23rd.
So we're skipping one more episode. Hopefully, we'll be done. Yeah. For a while after that.
Well, we've got a lot going on.
Busy.
So.
And we need to go ahead and start thinking about our next book because it's time to start figuring that out.
Oh yeah.
Tell everybody you know about our book club because I'm having a blast. There was 8 people in here this morning. There's 8 people in here right now.
What? Hi.
That's cool. I really enjoy talking about books with you guys.
Yeah, thanks for joining us, everybody. And we'll see you on the 23rd.
See you next time.
Happy reading.
The only problem with